Hi, I'm Sean McGowan. Today, we're going to learn how to expand our chord vocabulary with four-part chord voicings. In particular, we'll look at strategies for building four-part seventh chord voicings in 6 different groupings, work through their inversions, and practice voice leading through common jazz progressions. This lesson can be found in my Fingerstyle Jazz Guitar Essentials lesson series, published by Acoustic Guitar and available at acousticguitar.com. The term four-part chord voicing refers to a class of chord voicings in which the root, third, fifth, and seventh are all included in the voicing and represented on separate strings. With regard to these voicings, you might think of the guitar as a self-contained string quartet or even a soprano, alto, tenor, bass vocal choir, particularly when we start working on voice leading later on in the lesson. There are 6 basic groups of voicings. Let's have a quick look at each one. The voicings in Group 1 are a favorite of piano players in big band horn sections and are commonly referred to as four-way close voicings because all of the notes in the voicings are stacked up in numerical order and contained within a single octave. Here are some basic voicings of Group 1. G major 7, G minor 7, G7, and G minor 7 flat 5. On the guitar, some of these voicings can be extremely difficult to play in standard tuning, although some four-way close voicings and inversions are possible. You'll note that a couple of these voicings require a bit of a stretch, so be sure to keep your thumb down low behind the neck to facilitate easier stretching with your fretting hand. If they're still too difficult, feel free to play them as arpeggios. Example 1 shows a brief melody harmonized by a few of the most common guitar-friendly voicings from this group. The next group of voicings will look like guide tone voicings in root position with a fifth on top. Here are some of these in C. Here's a C major 7, C minor 7, C7, and C minor 7 flat 5. In these voicings, the fifth is moved up to the next octave, making them much easier to play than the voicings in Group 1. These chords are perfectly suited for solo guitar playing. It's as if there are 2 different guitarists, one playing the melody on top and one playing the guide tone voicings. The voicings in Group 3 feature a nice spread over a 2-octave range, with 2 low voices and also 2 higher voices. Here are some of the voicings in Group 3 for F. Here's F major 7, F minor 7, F dominant 7, and F minor 7 flat 5. These voicings work really well for solo guitar and also for a really full sound when comping in a duo situation with a vocalist or a horn player. Often referred to as drop 2 voicings, the chords in Group 4 comprise a set of voicings that are probably the most widely used by jazz guitarists. Here are some in C. Group 4 voicings: C major 7th, C minor 7, C dominant 7, and C minor 7 flat 5. These voicings and their respective inversions happen to lay out very well on the guitar, and consequently can be heard all over prominent jazz guitar records. The chords in Group 5 are also very popular with guitarists. These are sometimes known as drop 3 chords, usually learned with the root on the 6th string and featured in many different styles of contemporary music. Here are some of the voicings in Group 5. G major 7th, G minor 7th, G7, and G minor 7 flat 5. Like the drop 2 voicings from example 4, these chords are pretty user-friendly in standard tuning. Group 6 is perhaps the most rarely used of the groups due to the large spread of voices that sometimes approaches 3 octaves. Here are some voicings from group 6. D major 7, D minor 7, D dominant 7, and D minor 7 flat 5. As with the voicings from group 1, voicings in this group are usually played in root position and often arpeggiated to get around the enormous stretches. A good way to practice all of these voicings is to pick a key and work through the 6 groups of structures using diatonic 7th chords of the major scale to get around the fretboard. Let's go through root position drop 2 chords ascending through the key of C major. Up until now, we've been looking at root position chord voicings, voicings in which the root is the lowest note. But there are also 3 possible inversions for each 4-part 7th chord voicing. First, second, and third inversions are voicings that feature the 3rd, 5th, and 7th of the chord and the bass respectively. That makes 24 possible voicings for a simple 4-part structure comprised only of chord tones. Add to that the possible combinations of string sets, and the voicing options are dramatically increased. Some of the inversions in certain groups, particularly groups 1 and 6, are virtually unplayable without the use of extended fretting techniques, for example, fretting notes with the picking hand. In these next few examples, we'll try to keep things manageable by sticking to the 4 most common groups and working through inversions of just one chord, C major 7th. Example 8 shows inversions for the C major 7th chord from group 2. Similarly, example 9 shows inversions for the C major 7 spread voicings from group 3. While the voicings in this group are less common, they work beautifully when used in ballads and arranged solo guitar pieces. By contrast, inversions of the voicings in group 4 are some of the most commonly used among jazz guitarists. Because the notes in these voicings fall on adjacent strings, you actually have 3 different string sets to work with, each having their own unique character. Check out how different string sets affect the tone. For example, moving these inversions to the lowest 4 strings yields a rich, earthy tone. Now let's look at the group 5 inversions for C major 7. You're likely to find at least one of these voicings difficult to play as notated. Like group 4 voicings, these can also be moved to a lower string set with the bass note on the 6th string. most satisfying results of a solid knowledge of jazz chord inversions is good voice leading, the ability to move smoothly from one chord to another by way of common tones, which are shared notes between two different chords, or by small intervals like half or whole steps. Compare the two measures in this next example, and take note of how much smoother the second measure sounds than the first. The chords in measure 1 are set in root position and require larger movements, but measure 2 makes use of inverted versions that allow for much more subtle changes between chords. Now let's apply this to a tune. This next etude is based on a chord progression from the timeless standard All the Things You Are. This etude features chords and inversions from a few of the different groups that we've examined in this lesson. The song kicks off with several measures of chords from group 4, including both root position voicings and inversions that move between two different sets of strings. As the song progresses, you'll cycle through the voicings from group 3, group 5, and group 2. The study closes out with a pair of A-flat major 7 chords from group 3, including one in second inversion and one final voicing in root position. A 1, 2, 3, and... Okay, let's try this etude again, but at a much slower tempo. A 1, 2, 3, and... Okay, I'm going to play the etude again, but this time I'm going to add some rhythmic embellishments so you can see that there are real musical applications just by separating some of the voicings and adding rhythm. A 1, 2, 3, and... Thanks for joining me in this lesson. For more fingerstyle jazz instruction, check out the rest of my fingerstyle jazz guitar essentials lessons available at acousticguitar.com. For Acoustic Guitar, I'm Sean McGowan.